The Major League Baseball postseason took place in October, and for one team, 100 wins was not enough to qualify. At the halfway mark of the NFL season, there are no undefeated teams, but there is one still looking for their first win. The NBA season begins, and much more in the October 1980 edition of Back in Time Sports. The Major League Baseball season wrapped up in early October, with 3 division titles being decided in the last week of play. The only team that had clinched their spot in the playoffs early was the Royals, and the only drama in Kansas City was whether George Brett would finish the season with a .400 batting average. It was a long shot though, and Brett finished with a .390 average for the year. In the other divisions, the Yankees were trying to hold off the Orioles, Montreal was trying to hold off Philadelphia, and the Astros were trying to hold off the Dodgers. In the end, the Yankees were successful, the Expos were not, and the Astros pushed. Baltimore won 100 games, but it was not enough as New York closed strong and won 103. Philadelphia and Montreal faced off in the last series of the season for each team with identical records. The Phillies won the first 2 games and clinched a spot in the postseason. The Astros and Dodgers also faced off in the last series for both teams. The Dodgers needed a sweep at home to tie for the division lead, and that's exactly what they got. It wasn't easy though, with the Dodgers winning each game by only 1 run. In the last game of the season, the Astros were up 3-0 after 4 innings, but Los Angeles rallied for a 4-3 win. The sweep by Los Angeles forced a 1-game tiebreaker for the NL West division title. In the tiebreaker, the Astros bats took matters into their own hands, with first baseman Art Howe hitting a home run and driving in 4 runs to get Houston out to a 7-0 lead in the 4th. The Dodgers couldn't rally this time, with Astros pitcher Joe Niekro going the distance for his 20th win of the season. There was no rest for the Astros as they had to board an overnight flight from Los Angeles to Philadelphia to play the Phillies in the NLCS the following day. The AL Championship Series was a familiar sight. The Yankees and Royals have met in the ALCS in 3 of the last 4 years, with the Yankees winning each time. Kansas City was ready for New York this year, winning the first 2 games at home. In Game 3, the Yankees were leading 2-1 after 6 innings, but George Brett hit a 3-run homer off Goose Gossage in the top of the 7th to take a lead they wouldn't relinquish in a sweep of the Yankees. Philadelphia got off to a quick start in the National League Championship Series, winning Game 1 at home 3-1, powered by a 2-run homer from Greg Luzinski, which was the only home run of the entire series for either team. The Astros won the next 2 games and were just 1 win away from the team's first appearance in the World Series. In Game 4, Pete Rose ran over Astros catcher Bruce Bochy in the 10th inning to score the winning run. Game 5 went to extra innings for the 4th straight time, with the Phillies again scoring the winning run in the 10th to win their first pennant since 1950. The World Series appearance by the Kansas City Royals was the first in their 12-year franchise history, but the matchup with Philadelphia was close to happening more than once in recent history. Both teams won their division in 1976, 77, and 78, but both teams also lost their respective league championship series in each of those years. Several players on the World Series teams had already set major league records during the regular season. Willie Wilson of the Royals became the first player to have 700 at-bats in a single season and also set the record for most singles in a season with 184. Wilson also became only the 2nd player in Major League history to collect 100 hits from each side of the plate, matching the feat by Gary Templeton last year. Mike Schmidt of the Phillies set a record with the most home runs by a third baseman with 48. This was the first World Series that was played entirely on artificial turf, and the designated hitter was in effect for all games. The first 2 were played in Philadelphia, and although Kansas City hit a trio of 2-run homers in Game 1 and had a 2-run lead in the 8th in Game 2, the Phillies won both. Moving to Kansas City, the Royals won Game 3 in extra innings, and in Game 4 they knocked Phillies starter Larry Christensen out of the game after only 1/3 of an inning. Willie Aikens hit a pair of home runs for the 2nd time in the series, and Kansas City held on for a 5-3 win. The visiting team finally broke through in Game 5 when the Phillies scored 2 runs in the top of the 9th to send the series back to Philadelphia up 3-2. In Game 6, the Phillies got stellar pitching performances from starting pitcher Steve Carlton and closer Tug McGraw and won 4-1 to claim the first World Series championship in franchise history. Game 6 had the highest TV rating of any individual game in World Series history, with 40% of households in the United States watching the game. The high television ratings led to more money for the 2 teams, with both the winning and losing shares being the richest in history. Each of the 33 Phillies who were voted full shares will receive just under $35,000, and the 26 Royals shares were worth over $32,000 each. Both of those amounts were above the league's minimum salary of $30,000. Each player on the other playoff teams, the Astros and Yankees, will receive about $13,000. Week 5 of the NFL season saw 2 of the 3 undefeated teams in the league face off when the San Diego Chargers hosted the Buffalo Bills. The Chargers jumped out to a lead behind 2 touchdown passes from Dan Fouts and led in the third quarter by 12 points. The fourth quarter belonged to the Bills, however, who took advantage of key turnovers and scored 2 touchdowns to win the game 26-24. With Detroit losing to Atlanta 43-28, the Bills stood as the last undefeated team in the NFL under third-year coach Chuck Knox. Knox led the Los Angeles Rams to 5 straight NFC West championships and 3 straight NFC championship games, but couldn't get past Dallas and Minnesota to make it to the Super Bowl. Perhaps this year in the AFC he can break through with the Bills. New York Giants quarterback Phil Simms had a day to forget, with only 4 completions on 15 attempts for 87 yards and an interception against Dallas. The Cowboys improved to 4-1 on the season, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. In an NFC West battle, the Rams beat the 49ers in a 48-26 shootout with over 880 total yards in the game. Vince Ferragamo had over 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns and no interceptions in an impressive performance for the Rams. The 49ers turned to Joe Montana after being down 34-7 in the first half. Montana put up 250 yards with touchdowns to Dwight Clark and Freddie Solomon, but the 49ers couldn't close the deficit to less than 15 points. Week 6 had the season's first tie, with Green Bay and Tampa Bay fighting to a 14-14 stalemate. Despite outgaining the Buccaneers 569 yards to 262, Green Bay missed field goals in the last minute of regulation and the final seconds of overtime. The Cincinnati Bengals have only 2 wins on the season, and both have come against last year's champion Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bengals led 17-0 at halftime and held on to win thanks to several missed kicks by Pittsburgh, including a field goal attempt with 4 seconds left in the game. The losses to the Bengals are the only 2 on the season for Pittsburgh, who ended the week with a record of 4-2. The Buffalo Bills, the last undefeated team in the NFL, also lost this week to the Colts 17-12. The Dallas Cowboys annihilated San Francisco 59-14 due to an egregious 10 turnovers by the 49ers. The Cowboys had no turnovers, and Danny White completed 3 touchdown passes to Drew Pearson in a blowout win. Week 7 of the NFL slate had 2 shutouts, with the Bengals beating the Vikings 14-0 and Washington blanking St. Louis 23-0. Offense was not in short supply for San Diego, with the Chargers beating the Giants 44-7 behind 444 yards passing by Dan Fouts. 3 Chargers receivers had over 100 yards. Charlie Joyner, John Jefferson, and Kellen Winslow all broke the century mark. The Houston Oilers had over 200 yards passing from Ken Stabler and over 200 yards rushing from Earl Campbell, but had to hold on for a 20-14 win over Tampa Bay. The San Francisco 49ers lost to the Rams for the second time in 3 weeks, 31-17. The 49ers started Joe Montana at quarterback, who threw 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but it was too little too late. In a matchup of NFC East leaders, Dallas and Philadelphia, the Eagles won a closely contested game 17-10, with a Ron Jaworski fourth quarter touchdown the difference. At Shea Stadium, Seattle scored the last 17 points of the game to beat the Jets 27-17. It was the Seahawks' 4th win on the road in 4 attempts. Unfortunately, they are 0-3 in Seattle. In the highest scoring game in the 10-year history of Monday Night Football, the Oakland Raiders handed the Pittsburgh Steelers their 2nd straight home loss with a 45-34 win. Week 8 in the NFL was dominated by the home teams, who won 11 of the 14 matchups. In Houston, the Oilers quite literally ran over the Bengals 23-3. Earl Campbell was only a yard shy of duplicating his 203 rushing yards from last week and became only the 2nd running back in NFL history to post consecutive 200-yard games. Billy Sims also had a nice day running the ball, racking up 155 yards and 2 touchdowns and adding 29 more yards receiving. It turned out to be in a losing effort as Kansas City kicker Nick Lowry made a 40-yard field goal with just over a minute to play, and the Chiefs won 20-17. Lowry also had a 52-yarder in the game and has now hit 11 of 12 field goals on the season, including 3 of at least 50 yards. Dallas scored 28 straight points in the second half in a win over San Diego. The Cowboys took advantage of 7 Chargers turnovers and 2 first down runs by Danny White out of punt formation. Buffalo's defense held New England to 148 total yards, and their offense took over in the fourth quarter to beat the Patriots 31-13. The win put Buffalo in a tie with New England atop the AFC East. Baltimore Colts quarterback Burt Jones had a rough day, being sacked 12 times by the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals' defense only had 7 sacks through their first 7 games, but tied an NFL record with the sack attack. At the halfway mark of the season, Philadelphia holds the league's best record at 7-1, while the Saints are still looking for their first win of the season at 0-8. The highest scoring team is the San Diego Chargers, averaging just over 30 points per game, and the Eagles are giving up the fewest points, allowing just under 12 points a game. The surprise team of the year has to be the Detroit Lions, who are in first place in the NFC Central at 5-3 after just 2 wins in all of last year. San Francisco has also exceeded their win total from last year at 3-5 under second-year head coach Bill Walsh. In college football, Week 5's big matchups included number 2 Ohio State against number 11 UCLA, number 3 Nebraska versus number 16 Florida State, and number 9 Missouri hosting number 17 Penn State, with each ending in the road team pulling off the upset. UCLA shut out Ohio State in Columbus 17-0, giving Buckeyes coach Earl Bruce his first loss in 15 regular season games since replacing Woody Hayes. It was Ohio State's 74th consecutive sellout with 88,000 fans in attendance. Nebraska turnovers led to an 18-14 win by Florida State in Lincoln. The Seminoles forced a fumble with 10 seconds left to seal the win. Missouri lost 29-21 to Penn State on a 43-yard touchdown run by quarterback Todd Blackledge in the fourth quarter. Number 19 Florida lost to LSU at home despite 12 fumbles by the Tigers, who lost possession on 5 of them. Other wins by top 20 teams included number 4 USC in a narrow win over Arizona State 23-21, number 5 Texas over Rice 41-28, number 6 Pitt routing Maryland 38-9, and number 10 North Carolina shutting out Georgia Tech 33-0. Number 1 Alabama beat Kentucky 45-0 in what would ordinarily be a standard rout, but it was Crimson Tide coach Bear Bryant's 300th win. It was the Tide's 25th straight win and lifted Bryant's record to 377-16. Bryant is only 14 victories away from the all-time record held by Amos Alonzo Stagg. A survey of several coaches by the UPI indicated that recruiting rule changes and other factors are causing a gradual diminishing of so-called elite teams. Indiana coach Lee Corso said the NCAA's limitation on scholarships to 95 has prevented teams from stockpiling top players. Before 1973, there were no limits, and some schools would have 150 or more players on scholarship. In addition, Corso said top freshmen no longer want to go to a major power and sit on the bench when they can start for another school. Iowa coach Hayden Fry said the adage that any team can beat another on any given Saturday is finally coming true. On the field in Week 6, the only losses among the top 20 teams came against other top 20 teams. Number 3 Texas and number 12 Oklahoma met for their annual Red River rivalry at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. It seemed as though both teams were trying to give the game away with 14 combined turnovers. The quarterbacks combined for 10 completions to their own teams and 6 completions to the other team. But Texas held on to the ball on a 76-yard drive in the fourth quarter and punched it in for a touchdown on 4th and 2 for a 20-13 win. The Longhorns now lead the series 44-27 with 3 ties. There were 4 other matchups between top 20 teams. After beating third-ranked Nebraska in Lincoln last week, number 11 Florida State returned home to knock off another top 5 team, beating number 4 Pittsburgh 36-22, halting the Panthers' 14-game winning streak. Running back Freeman McNeil ran for 4 touchdowns as number 5 UCLA rallied for a 35-21 win over 16th-ranked Stanford. McNeil was held to 28 yards in the first half, but had no problems in the second half, adding 220 yards to his total. Number 13 Miami had given up only 63 yards rushing in their first 4 games combined, but allowed almost 4 times that many to Notre Dame as the number 7 Irish won 32-14. With 18 seconds left in the game and trailing by 4 points, number 20 SMU had the ball 4th and 2 at the 8-yard line of number 18 Baylor. But whatever play was called did not have a chance as a snap was fumbled to give the Bears a 32-28 win. Sophomore running back Eric Dickerson had 112 yards and a touchdown in the losing effort for the Mustangs. In other notable games, Cal beat Oregon 31-6, giving the Golden Bears not only their first win of the year, but also an NCAA record of 21 straight completions for quarterback Rich Campbell. It was an all-night affair in the Astrodome as the Houston Cougars and Texas A&M played a game lasting 2 days. Due to an NLCS game between the Houston Astros and Philadelphia Phillies, which didn't end until almost 7:30 p.m., and the need to convert the playing surface in the Astrodome from baseball to football, the game kicked off in half an hour before midnight with over 37,000 dedicated fans in attendance. When it finally ended at 2:41 in the morning Sunday, the Cougars came out on top 17-13. None of the teams in the top 17 lost in Week 7, but number 2 USC did suffer a tie in Eugene against Oregon. Running back Marcus Allen ran for 159 yards, but the rest of Southern Cal's offense was shut down as the game ended 7-7. The tie with the number 2 team moved the Ducks' record to 2 wins, 2 losses, and 2 ties. Number 11 Pittsburgh called on their starting safety to move behind center after quarterback Dan Marino went out of the game in the first half with a recurring knee injury. The change didn't hamper the Panthers' offense as they cruised to a 42-14 victory. The 3 teams that rounded out the top 20 all lost their games. Number 18 Miami lost to Mississippi State 34-31. Number 19 Iowa State lost to Kansas 28-17. And number 20 Stanford lost to Washington 27-24 on a field goal with 2 seconds left. BYU scored 70 points and beat Utah State in a game that had 116 total points put on the scoreboard. Jim McMahon, the Cougars quarterback, set an NCAA record by passing for 342 yards in the first half. BYU is now averaging 41 points per game this season. There was only one game between ranked teams in Week 8, with top-ranked Alabama hosting number 20 Southern Mississippi. There wasn't much drama as Alabama won its 28th consecutive game and 51st consecutive game at Bryant-Denny Stadium. The Golden Eagles were ranked in the AP poll for the first time since moving to Division I in 1963, and it seems their ranking will be short-lived. There were several upsets in the Southwest Conference, with the most notable coming in Austin, Texas. SMU started a freshman quarterback who had only 16 yards rushing and only completed one pass, but SMU avoided mistakes, played outstanding defense, and got just enough offense with running back Craig James rushing for 147 yards to beat the Longhorns 20-6. Number 15 Arkansas took a trip to Houston and left with a 24-17 loss to the Cougars. The rest of the top 20 won comfortably with the exception of number 18 Washington, who were knocked off by Navy 24-10. There were some long kickoff returns in games that featured teams from Pennsylvania. Number 13 Penn State got an 88-yard return from Kurt Warner to seal their 22nd consecutive win over West Virginia by a score of 20-15. Number 12 Pittsburgh gave up a 100-yard return to Tennessee's Willie Gault, but otherwise shut down the Volunteers in front of 94,000 disappointed fans at Neyland Stadium to win 30-6. In a Division I AA game, the Portland State Vikings beat Cal Poly Pomona 93-7. Cal Poly was in the game until they fumbled on the first play of the game. Portland State quarterback Neil Lomax completed 13 of 20 passes for 339 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then handed the game off to his backup, who proceeded to connect on 15 of 17 for 264 yards and 6 touchdowns. The NBA narrowly averted a major disruption by agreeing to a 3-year deal with the referees union just 2 days before the season began. The officials had threatened to walk out without a deal. But the NBA season did start on time with a matchup between the previous 2 champions, the Seattle Supersonics and the Los Angeles Lakers, in a nationally televised game. The Los Angeles Lakers are attempting to be the first repeat champion since the Boston Celtics accomplished the feat in the 1968-69 season. The Lakers started slow but pulled out a thrilling 1-point road victory in front of 35,000 fans in the Kingdome. Neither team attempted a 3-point shot, which was not a surprise for the Lakers. Last year, only one team attempted fewer 3-pointers than the Lakers, but no one was better at 2-point efficiency, with the Lakers shooting 53% as a team. The NBA's newest team, the Dallas Mavericks, won their season opener against the San Antonio Spurs by 11 points. The Spurs' George Gervin, who was last year's NBA scoring champ with 33.1 points per game, got off to another good start with 33 points in the loss. The Mavericks' defense didn't hold up over the rest of October, giving up 133 points to the Denver Nuggets and 144 points to the Utah Jazz, the 2 highest point totals of all games in the month. On October 18th, the Detroit Pistons set an NBA record with 21 blocked shots against the Atlanta Hawks in a double overtime loss. Another record was set when Ron Boone of the Utah Jazz played in his 1,000th consecutive game. It's not an official NBA record because Boone played his first 662 games in the ABA. Boone has not missed a game in either league since he started his career. At the end of the first month of play, the best records belong to the Suns, Spurs, Bucks, Lakers, and 76ers. The Professional Basketball Writers Association of America chose 11 players for the NBA All-Time Team to commemorate the league's 35th year. Bill Russell was named the greatest player in the history of the league. Other members of the team were Wilt Chamberlain, Bob Cousy, Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor, George Mikan, Bob Pettit, John Havlicek, Jerry West, Julius Erving, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The current players voted to the team, Erving and Abdul-Jabbar, are also 2 of the 4 players with a salary of $1 million this season. The other 2 are Bill Walton and Moses Malone. In the random sports section, Muhammad Ali came out of retirement to fight WBC heavyweight champion Larry Holmes at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. The popular challenger received $8 million, which was $2 million more than the champion. The temperature of the outdoor arena was 89 degrees, which quickly took its toll on the 38-year-old Ali. Holmes dominated the match, and although Ali wasn't knocked down, his trainer Angelo Dundee stopped the fight in the 10th round, and Holmes won by technical knockout. The 1980 Mr. Olympia bodybuilding contest was held at the Sydney Opera House in Australia. One of the participants was former champion Arnold Schwarzenegger, who won 6 straight Mr. Olympia titles between 1970 and 1975. In the last 5 years, Schwarzenegger has been working on his acting skills, currently working on the lead role for a movie called Conan the Barbarian. Being in good shape for the film, Schwarzenegger decided to enter the contest one day prior to judging, and won a controversial decision to take his 7th title. The 4th annual World's Strongest Man contest took place in New Jersey and was dominated by Bill Kazmaier. There were 10 events, including an overhead log lift, a truck pull, a fridge carry, and a steel bar bend. Kazmaier won 6 of the events and didn't finish lower than 4th in any event. College football is taken seriously in Texas, and a loss in a key game may cost a coach their job. But in what may be an unprecedented occurrence, a loss cost a public address announcer his job. TCU fired Bob Berry for announcing the result of SMU's upset victory over Texas during the Horned Frogs game against Baylor. Baylor and TCU were locked in a close game when Berry announced the result, which apparently boosted the Bears' spirits as they would now claim the Southwest Conference title with a win. On the next play, the Bears intercepted a pass, scored a quick touchdown, and went on to beat TCU 21-6. If the PA job in Waco opens up, Berry may want to consider sending in an application. That's all for October 1980. Looking ahead to the next episode, we'll recap the second half of the NFL season, the college football season wraps up with the bowl games getting underway, some Christmas gift ideas for sports fans, and much more on the November and December 1980 edition of Back in Time Sports.